Affirmative side, are you ready? Ready? I want to hear that you're ready. Are you ready, affirmative side? All right, that's the spirit. How about the negative side? Are you ready? All right, sige. So, ladies and gentlemen, I now hereby declare the start of this debate. Starting off, for the affirmative side is their first speaker. Please proceed to your podium. You have 7 minutes to argue the need for the legislation of rights, stand corrected, the legalization of the rights of LGBTQ plus students to wear cross-gender uniforms. First affirmative speaker, you may now begin.
To the respectable panel of adjudicators, members of the debating teams, dear spectators, friends, students of Sara National High School and SSG advisors, a pleasant morning, one and all. One of the emerging issues concerning the rise of a vulnerable sector in our country, the LGBTQ community, today is the wearing of cross-gender uniform. Hence, our proposition for debate this morning resolved that the rise of LGBTQ students to wear cross-gender uniform be legalized. For the purpose of this debate, the following terms are defined. Cross-gender, one's identity as female or male opposite to their sex assigned at birth. Those who assume that the role of the opposite sex by adopting the clothes, hairstyle, and manner of speaking. Cross-gender uniform, a set of uniform intended to be worn by a person whose gender is opposite or different to the sex, male or female, the uniform is prescribed for. Legalized, to allow something by law, to create a law that will allow LGBTQ students to wear cross-gender uniforms. LGBTQ, an abbreviation for lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, plus others. Uniform, the distinctive clothing worn by students at certain schools. The parameters. Number 1, students who shall wear cross-gender uniform refer to students of any gender who opts to wear uniform not intended for his or her sexual assigned at birth. Number 2, wearing cross-gender uniform must be dealt with absolute decency. Number 3, cross-dressing is the act of wearing clothes traditionally or stereotypically associated with a different gender either by intent or as adaptation of a new gender role and should not be interpreted or equated to cross-gender. Number 4, limited to school setting only and applicable in both elementary and high school educational system of public and private schools in the Philippines. Your Honors, lawmakers and school administrators in the Philippines have recognized the prevailing problems of LGBTQ youth whose clamor is to allow them to wear uniform they are comfortable wearing. This on top of other pressing issues like gender-based bullying on the basis of sexual orientation and gender identity. These are serious problems that prompted them to decide interventions to address it. First, we have the Child Protection Policy, which was designed to address bullying and discrimination in schools, including on the basis of sexual orientation and gender identity. Second, the Congress passed the Anti-Bullying Law of 2013, with implementing rules and regulations that enumerate sexual orientation and gender identity as prohibited grounds for bullying and harassment. The adaptation of these policies sends a strong signal that bullying and discrimination are unacceptable and should not be tolerated in educational institutions. But these policies, while strong on paper, have not been adequately enforced. In the absence of effective implementation and monitoring, many LGBTQ youth continue to experience bullying, harassment, and discrimination on the basis of sexual orientation and gender identity. Schools impose uniform or dress codes, restrictions on hair length. Schools impose rigid gender norms on students in a variety of ways, for example, through gender uniform or dress codes, restrictions on hair length, among others. In a study conducted by the Human Rights Watch in 2017, students whose gender expression differed from the norms associated with their sex assigned at birth revealed that these restrictions impeded their education. Students reported that being forced to dress or prevent themselves in a manner that was inconsistent with their gender expression made them unhappy and uncomfortable, low confidence, and impaired concentration in school. Schools should be a safe place for everyone, right? But in the Philippines, students who are lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender who wanted to express their identity by wearing the uniform they are comfortable with too often find that their schooling experience is marred by bullying, discrimination, and in some cases, physical assault. In addition to physical and psychological injuries, students describe how bullying, discrimination, and exclusion cause them to lose concentration, skip class, or seek to transfer schools, all impairing their right to education. These abuses can cause deep and lasting harm and curtail students to right education. Protected under Philippine and international law, when LGBTQ students face these issues, whether in isolation or together, the school can become a difficult or hostile environment. These are the flaws of the status quo that the affirmative side wanted to change. These mistreatments that students face in schools, exacerbated by discriminatory policies and practices that excluded members of the LGBTQ from fully participating in the school environment, can be addressed by enacting a law that will allow LGBTQ members to wear cross-gender uniforms. Your Honors, while DepEd have issued the Order Number 32 Series of 2017, or the Gender-Responsive Basic Education Policy, and strengthened its commitment to integrate the principles of gender equality, gender equity, gender sensitivity, non-discrimination, and human rights, and allow LGBTQ students to freely express themselves to their preferred gender uniform. There are no criminal liability for those offenders who will violate the provisions of the said DepEd order. That's why there are prevalent cases of bullying and harassment. By enacting a law that will allow members of the LGBTQ to wear cross-gender uniform, it will become a deterrent for other students to mock, harass, or discriminate them, because that is the very essence of the law, to penalize who violate its provisions, provided that their sanctions or penalties are age-appropriate. Your Honors, we may be a conservative country. However, norms are not immutable. We should not allow more discrimination to the members of the LGBTQ community, and especially in our students. By allowing a law that recognizes their rights to wear cross-gender uniforms will help our society to slowly accept the new norm and thus create a school climate that is inclusive and safe for everyone regardless of their dress preference. Lastly, let me share the words of our refutable Senator Risa Hontiveros, and I quote, "If we really love our LGBTQ friends, we'd fight that they enjoy the same rights as we do. We'd educate ourselves about their struggles. We'd use our straight privilege to dismantle an old system that oppresses them." Ms. Speaker, I am now ready for your interpellation.
Thank you very much. First speaker of the negative side, please proceed to your podium. You have 3 minutes to cross-examine the first affirmative speaker.
Good morning, Mr. Speaker.
Good morning, Ms. Speaker.
For my first question, if we implement the legalization of cross-gender uniform, will this decrease the number of discrimination cases?
Yes, by enacting a law, it will slowly...
That will be all, Mr. Speaker. Do you have any basis for this claim? Proceeding to my next question. Mr. Speaker, are you aware that there is no such law or provision in the Constitution that forbids students from wearing school uniforms?
Yes, Ms. Speaker.
You are aware that the use of gender cross uniform is not currently prohibited by law?
Yes, Ms. Speaker.
As you have agreed, Mr. Speaker, are you saying that the wearing of cross-gender uniform is already legal in the current status quo?
No, Ms. Speaker.
Proceeding to my next question, given that the policies that you have mentioned were not implemented properly, are you sure that your proposition will?
Can you repeat the question, Ms. Speaker?
Given that the policies that you mentioned were not implemented properly, are you sure that your proposition will?
Yes, Ms. Speaker.
What are your basis for this claim?
By enacting another law, Ms. Speaker, it will become...
Can you present us your basis?
No, Ms. Speaker.
Proceeding to my next question, Mr. Speaker, can LGBTQ plus students and anti-clothing could freely express themselves through ways like speech and gesture?
Can you repeat the question, Ms. Speaker?
Can LGBTQ plus students and anti-clothing could freely express themselves through ways like speech and gesture?
Yes, Ms. Speaker.
That will be all. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. So at this point, first speaker of the negative side, you have 5 minutes to argue why there is no need to legalize the rights of LGBTQ plus students to wear cross-gender uniforms.
Mr. Moderator, Board of Educators, members of both debating teams, ladies and gentlemen, everyone, good morning. We, on the negative side, disagrees to the notion of the proposition that the rights of LGBTQ plus students to wear cross-gender uniforms be legalized. For our first argument, there is currently no DepEd directive that forbids students from dressing however they like, nor is there a state law that mandates the usage of school uniforms. So it is not necessary to enforce legislation regarding LGBTQ plus students to wear cross-gender uniforms in the effort to have them legalized. It is therefore irrelevant. As per DepEd Order number 065, Article 2, issued in 2010, it is stated that the wearing of school uniforms shall not be required in public schools. And through this order, schools could not curtail students' freedom of expression as long as the students' choices were not disruptive and did not impinge upon the rights of others. And if we are to argue that schools are still mandating us to wear uniforms, I would like to reiterate that school uniforms are only encouraged but not mandated on the grounds of any existing law or order. Hence, the mere idea of having the legalization of cross-gender uniform is absolutely meaningless because, first of all, there's no existing law that prohibits it. For our second argument, legalizing cross-gender uniforms is not on top of the list among the ways to support LGBTQ plus students. The resolution for criminal cases involving LGBTQ plus students should be the main focus, and these are as follows. Schools should focus more on strengthening the strict implementation and enforcement of existing strategies to support not only LGBTQ plus students, but all its citizenry to further improve safety and create a more inclusive environment. Promoting the Republic Act number 10627 or the Anti-Bullying Act aims to protect children enrolled in kindergarten, elementary and secondary schools and learning centers from being bullied. It requires schools to adopt policies to address the existence of bullying in their respective institutions. Sexual orientation and sexual identity are included as prohibited grounds for bullying of Republic Act number 10627 and the implementing rules and regulation of DepEd Order 55 issued in 2013. We also have the DepEd Order number 32 issued in 2017, known as the Gender Responsive Basic Education Policy, which recognizes that the concept of gender includes relations between women and those between men. The policy further recognizes the concepts of gender awareness, gender-based violence, gender-based discrimination, gender expression, and gender identity, among others. Aside from that, the Republic Act number 11313 or the Safe Space Act or the Bawal Bastos Law is an act defining gender-based sexual harassment in streets, public spaces, online, workplaces, and educational or training institutions, providing protective measures and prescribing penalties, therefore. In conclusion, there are no legal basis that outlaw students from wearing cross-gender uniforms. The wearing of school uniforms in educational institutions is not mandated, but rather encouraged. And lastly, there are a number of existing laws that serve to protect all individuals of all genders, including LGBTQ plus members. Therefore, legalizing cross-gender uniform is not on top of the list among the ways to support LGBTQ plus students. The notion of the proposition is therefore not necessary. Mr. Speaker, I am now ready for interpellation.
Thank you very much. First speaker of the affirmative side, you may now cross-examine the first speaker of the negative side. You have 3 minutes and your time starts now.
Ms. Speaker, this is my first question. Do you agree we as a democratic country should respect the rights of LGBTQ members to freely express themselves?
Yes, Mr. Speaker, I do agree.
Then, do you agree that the current status quo in our country have existing flaws?
Mr. Speaker, as I have stated in my second argument, I have presented a plethora of policies and rules that are intended to protect all individuals. What I am saying is that we should implement the strict implementation and enforcement of these laws.
So is that a yes or no, Mr. Speaker?
Yes.
Then, do you agree that there is a need to change these laws?
As stated in my second argument, I am insisting that we should strictly implement these laws and orders and enforce them.
Is that a yes or no? Yes?
No.
Okay. Do you agree that even though we have existing anti-bullying laws and child protection acts, the cases of bullying and discrimination to LGBT youth is still rampant?
Again, stated in my speech, Mr. Speaker, on my second argument, it is clearly stated that what we are lacking is not another law, but rather the strict implementation and enforcement of the existing laws that already exist in our current status quo. So therefore, it is not necessary to enforce another legislation.
Then do you agree that it is enough, the existing flaws?
Yes, I do agree, Mr. Speaker.
Then do you agree that there is still discrimination in our schools between LGBT members and the straight ones?
Can you repeat your question, Mr. Speaker?
Do you agree that even though there is existing laws in our country, there is still discrimination in our schools?
Yes.
Then do you agree that every act of discrimination and any form of harassment should have its corresponding sanctions?
Mr. Moderator, can we ask Mr. Speaker to make his voice clearly?
Do you agree that every act of discrimination and any form of harassment should have its corresponding sanctions?
Of course, Mr. Speaker, I do agree.
Then do you agree that enacting another law would further strengthen its power to protect our children?
No, Mr. Speaker, I do not agree.
Okay, that will be all, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you very much. You may now be seated. All right, that was fun. Now let's proceed. Second affirmative speaker, please proceed to your podium. You now have 5 minutes to argue why it would be beneficial to legalize the rights of LGBTQ plus students to wear cross-gender uniforms. Your 5 minutes starts now.
A wonderful morning to everyone, especially to our adjudicators, debating teams, and our spectators. At this point, as a second speaker, I'm going to elaborate our stand regarding the benefits of legalizing the rights of LGBTQ plus students to wear cross-gender uniform. But before reading my speech, I would like to enumerate our defenses against the first speaker from the negative side. So one of them is that she said that there is no Republic Act against that. But we are saying that Inday Sara said, the Department of Education headed by Vice President reminded parents that wearing school uniforms in public schools when going to class starting August 22 is no longer mandatory. So we are saying that wearing of school uniform, the schools are only approved by parents so they can wear the said uniform. So I am gender identity are integral aspects of ourselves and should never lead to discrimination or abuse. Embracing cross-gender uniform creates a diversified atmosphere in which people may fully express themselves and eliminates gendered prejudices by generating positive recognition upon its normalization. Moreover, studies conducted by the Human Rights Watch reveal that allowing members of LGBTQ+ students to wear cross-gender uniform can remove peer pressure, improve study ethics, fairer dress codes for LGBTQ+, reduce redistraction, focus on character building, and mitigate the societal attempts of students due to lacks of expressing oneself and uncomfortableness for what they wear. Respecting gender identity and expression in the classroom encourages students to identify themselves as member of LGBTQ+, promotes an atmosphere of inclusiveness and diversity in the classroom. It would also help the society to become more accepting of the LGBTQ community, eliminating the stigma between people. Enacting or legalizing law that allows LGBTQ students to wear cross-gender uniforms will have the following benefits. First is promoting inclusivity. Cross-gender uniforms would allow LGBTQ students to express their gender identity without fear of discrimination or harassment. This would create a more inclusive school environment that generally promotes and advocates the acceptance and understanding of the different gender identities that the learners may choose. The second one is improving mental health. LGBTQ students often experience higher levels of stress, anxiety, and depression due to the stigma and discrimination they face. Legalizing cross-gender uniforms could help alleviate these negative emotions by allowing them to express their gender identity in an environment setting that accepts them for who they really are and in a way that they would really authentic and comfortable. The third one is enhancing academic performance. When students feel safe, accepted, and comfortable in their environment, they tend to perform well academically. Thus, legalizing cross-gender uniforms could contribute in creating a positive and supportive learning environment for LGBTQ students and help them achieve their full potential. The fourth one is supporting human rights. As stated in our Constitution, Article 2, Section 11, all individuals, regardless of their gender identity, have the right to express themselves and be treated with dignity and respect. And so, the legalization of the cross-gender uniform would be a big leap in the promotion and protection of every LGBTQ+ member of the society. And the last one is reducing bullying and discrimination. A national survey conducted by Council for the Advancement of People, that was 2017, shows that 25.2% of LGBTQ respondents have experienced discrimination because of their sexual orientation or gender identity. By legalizing cross-gender
Time is
uniforms,
up. Thank you very much. Second speaker. Second speaker of the negative side, please proceed to your podium. You have 3 minutes to cross-examine the second affirmative speaker. Please begin when you're ready.
Mr. Moderator, Board of Adjudicators, I will start my interpellation. You have claimed that cross-gender uniforms could boost academic performance.
Yes.
Could you provide legal basis?
Of course I have. Based on the NA 2017,
Next question.
Just let Mr.
Does your
Salmorin,
proposition
can I
focuses on
qualify the answer?
Let
Because I have proof.
Okay,
According to the research shows that when schools implement a uniform policy, it improves grades.
Mr. Moderator, I would like to interrupt the speaker. I would like to ask the title
Mr. Modulator,
and when it is
I want to
conducted.
qualify my...
Please proceed with your next
I am not yet
Mr.
on to my
Moderator, I will now proceed to my next question. Does your proposition only focuses on the self-expression?
Order, please. Alright, let's proceed to the next question, please.
Does your proposition only focuses on the self-expression aspect of its benefits?
Come again, pardon please.
Does your proposition only focuses on the self-expression aspect as its benefits?
No, not all, because
I will only accept a yes or no answer.
no.
Since you have disagreed, Ms. Speaker, are you trying to insinuate that you have failed to provide sufficient data?
No, I have the data
I
here.
will accept only a yes or no answer. Proceeding to my next question, again, I will only accept a yes or no answer. Do you agree that your proposition, rather than having substantial benefits, it can be a leading factor for school-based discrimination? Yes or no?
Yes.
Since you have agreed, Ms. Speaker, are you trying to debunk your claims on the benefits of your proposition?
Yes.
That would be all, Mr. Moderator.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And now, second negative speaker, you have 5 minutes to argue why it would not be beneficial to legalize the rights of LGBTQ plus students to wear gender uniforms. You may now begin.
Board of Adjudicators, Mr. Moderator, fellow debaters, observers, ladies and gents, good morning. I, beneficiality speaker of the negative side, shall now start or present my arguments on why the resolution on the rights of LGBTQ plus students to wear cross-gender uniforms should not be legalized. Under DepEd Order Number 065, Series of 2010, it states that the wearing of school uniforms shall not be required in public schools. Students with existing uniforms may continue to use these uniforms if so they desire in order to avoid additional costs. The implementation of school uniforms, I would like to clarify that it is not implemented or mandated by any law, but it is encouraged. Under or with a reference of the DepEd guidelines in the Development of Learners Discipline Manual that provides the standard guidelines for uniforms and proper haircut for boys. However, these guidelines are being weakened after the release of DepEd OUGFO number 2022-02-0153 memorandum, the reiteration of DepEd Order number 32, Series of 2017, titled Gender Responsive Basic Policy Education, which allows the gender sensitivity, non-discrimination, gender equity, gender equality among students with the provision and governance of human rights. This suggests that gender neutrality to avoid further biases, prejudice, and forms of violence. Therefore, legalizing this resolution bears no benefits among learners, for this resolution was successfully achieved by the existing DepEd orders that were strengthened by its provisions and amendments. Though the Philippines is considered as a gay-friendly country, there are reports that Filipino, lesbian, gay, transgender, and bisexual community, especially students, are struggling with bullying and discrimination from families, communities, and schools in particular. According to the statistics from Equaldex, a website that collects, displays, and analyzes data about LGBT laws, facts, polls, and opinions globally, by region, or by country, the concept of LGBTQIA+ community rights is acknowledged but not guaranteed. As reported in GMA News 24 Horas, the Department of Education recorded 7,800 cases of gender-based bullying in the school year 2021 to 2022. Thus, the idea of cross-gender uniforms in the Philippines cannot be attributed to the eradication of discrimination, bullying, harassment, stereotypes, violence, and other forms of maltreatment. The Philippines is currently testing the waters with regards to the acceptance of the LGBTQIA+ community. Conservatism is a major factor affecting the difficulties in the acceptance of the LGBTQIA+ community. The introduction of cross-gender uniforms is not that easy to accept, since the proposal aims to be implemented not only to secondary schools but also in elementary schools, which is not recommendable as it could cause confusion among students ages 6 to 12 years old that still need guidance in evaluating their gender orientation. In a report by Philstar last February 2023, a study was conducted in 2022 by the Senate Committee on Basic Education, spearheaded by Senator Win Gatchalian. Results show that 7 out of 10 heterosexual Filipino students have suffered from bullying. It implies that LGBTQIA students is not far from experiencing the same situation. Discriminatory acts such as malicious intent, harassment, and shaming are somehow lessened by conservatism as it implies decency and appropriateness. The Safe Space or the Safe Spaces Act or Bawal Bastos Law covers all forms of gender-based sexual harassment committed in public spaces, in educational training institutions, workplaces, and other online spaces, to provide recognition, protection, and acceptance of the LGBTQIA+ students and their community. Thus, this law is already an act that proves our conservative side. In conclusion, while it is important to support students with their rights and identities, legalizing the right of LGBTQ students to wear transgender uniforms bear no benefits. I rest my case.
Your time is up. Thank you very much. Before we proceed, requesting one member of the TWG to please come up the stage. I have a request now. Alright, so second affirmative speaker, you have 3 minutes to cross-examine the second negative speaker.
Hello, Mr. Speaker. My first question for you is this law not beneficial to LGBTQ members? Just answer yes or no.
Mr. Moderator, I would like to please ask the speaker to pronounce or to say her question clearly since it is not received properly.
Okay. Is this law not beneficial to LGBTQ members?
Is it rampant, Mr. Speaker?
No, I mean, if we're going to legalize this law, is it beneficial to LGBTQ members?
I oppose since there are existing
Okay,
laws.
just say yes or no.
No.
Okay, next question. Do you think school uniforms make social differences smaller?
Mr. Moderator, can you please repeat your question since it is not received properly?
Okay. Do you think school uniforms make social difference smaller?
Smaller?
Yeah, smaller.
No.
Okay, next question. Do you think school uniforms damage students' individuality?
Could you please repeat, Ms. Speaker?
Okay. Do you think school uniforms can damage students' individuality?
No, I oppose.
Okay. My next question is, do you believe that school uniform is not helpful to improve one's self-esteem?
It is not mandated or
Just say yes or no.
No.
Okay, cite your citation or article or statistic. That you are not saying that school uniform is not improving the self-esteem of one student.
Mr. Moderator, I would like to clarify that it is not in my argument, therefore it is irrelevant.
Okay, next question. Are you aware that anti-bullying does not shield the LGBTQ?
Mr. Moderator, could you please repeat? It is not received properly. She is mumbling her words.
Again, are you aware that anti-bullying does not shield the LGBTQ?
The Anti-Bullying Act is not only covering the LGBTQ, but also all
Okay,
aspects.
next question. There is no national legislation that would protect LGBTQ. So are you aware of that?
We have article number, we have the reference from our Constitution that the freedom of expression is protected under the
Okay, next
Constitution. This
question.
is one factor.
Okay,
that protects
mister,
them.
next question. Do you deny that LGBTQ members are vulnerable sectors?
I do not deny. As I have stated, they are being
Okay,
discriminated.
thank you. That's all, mister.
Thank you very much. You may now be seated. Right, so that's the kind of interpolation and cross-examination that we are expecting. Thank you. Let's proceed. Third affirmative speaker. Please proceed to your podium. You now have 5 minutes to argue the practicability of legalizing the rights of LGBTQ plus students to wear cross-gender uniforms. You may now begin.
Mike, please. Ladies and gentlemen, as the third speaker, I am tasked to defend the feasibility or the practicability of the proposition. I have the rights of the LGBTQ students to wear cross-gender uniforms be legalized. Firstly, the affirmative side is firm in the stand that our proposition is not about promoting any particular lifestyle or trend. It is about the basic human rights, including the right to express oneself and be who you truly are without the fear of discrimination and violence. Allowing LGBTQ students to wear cross-gender uniform is a practical step toward achieving this fundamental right. We live in a diverse society, and it is crucial that schools reflect this diversity. They often face bullying, harassment, and discrimination in schools, which can lead to mental health problems and even suicide. By allowing the students to wear cross-gender uniforms, we send a message that they are a valued member of our community and their identity is respected. Furthermore, cross-gender uniforms will not only benefit LGBTQ plus students, but also provide a broader understanding of gender and gender expression. It would allow for a more nuanced understanding of which is not limited to LGBTQ plus. This is important, especially in a community where gender norms are rigidly enforced, leading to exclusion and discrimination of those who do not fit into these norms. Critics may argue that allowing cross-gender uniform is impractical or that it goes against traditional values. However, it is important to recognize that the traditional values are not immutable and that society has evolved to recognize and accept the different forms of gender expressions. Moreover, allowing students to wear cross-gender uniform does not harm anyone else or infringe on anyone's rights. It is simply about allowing individuals to express themselves in a way that feels true to their identity. As mentioned by our first speaker, there have been gaps in the implementation of the law and that respect the rights of LGBTQ students. Thus, a comprehensive law which focuses specifically on allowing the member of LGBTQ plus students to wear cross-gender uniform is urgently needed to be enacted today. The Philippines has a long story of robust LGBTQ advocacy. Attitudes toward LGBTQ people are relatively open and tolerant. A survey conducted in 2013 found that 73% of Filipinos believe that society should accept homosexuality. How can this proposition be feasible? Let me cite the concrete steps to make this proposition happen. First, develop a policy framework. The Department of Education could develop a policy framework that allows the use of cross-gender uniform of LGBTQ plus students. This framework should include guidelines on how school can implement the policy in a way that is sensitive in the needs of all students. Third, consult with stakeholders. The DepEd should consult with various stakeholders, including parents, educators, and LGBTQ organizations to ensure that the policy is implemented in a way that is fair and equitable for all students. Third, conduct a public awareness campaign to educate the public about the importance of respecting gender identity and expression. This can include media appearances, social media campaigns, and public events that highlights the need for inclusive policies in school. Lastly, it was stated in RA 9710 Section 37 or the Magna Carta of Women that the government agency must allocate at least 5% of their annual budget for gender and development programs and projects. This provision is aimed at mainstreaming gender perspective in all government policies, programs, and activities, and promoting gender equality and empowerment. This provision in the law will give assurance that in the event that proposition will be enacted, there will be the source of fund in the school to make the implementation of the law be funded, and thus the law will take its full course. In conclusion, allowing LGBTQ students to wear cross-gender uniform is a practical step toward creating a more inclusive and accepting school environment. It is about respecting the diversity of our society and ensuring that all students are treated with dignity and respect. Let us embrace this change and move toward a more equitable and just society. We at the informative side agrees with our Filipino pride, Leia Salonga. We must promote inclusivity and respect for all individuals, including LGBTQ students. Let us work toward building a society that values diversity and upholds human rights. With that, I rest my case and I am now ready for the interpellation.
Thank you very much. 3 minutes to cross-examine the third affirmative speaker.
Mr. Speaker, my first question is, do you agree that legalizing cross-gender is not practicable if discrimination already exists before they can even fully express themselves? Yes or no?
Can you repeat your question, Ms. Speaker?
Do you agree that legalizing cross-gender is not practicable if discrimination already exists before they can even express themselves?
No.
Then, Mr. Speaker, are you aware of the non-discrimination bill?
There is a non-discrimination.
Yes,
I am
no.
aware. Mr. Moderator, can I explain my answer?
Since you are aware, Mr. Speaker, do you think that cross-gender uniform is much practicable of legalizing than the non-discrimination bill? Yes or no?
Can you repeat your question?
Do you think, Mr. Speaker, is cross-gender uniform much practicable of legalizing than the non-discrimination bill? Yes or no?
No and yes.
Since you are unsure of your answer, Mr. Speaker, then are you saying
I'm not
that
saying I'm not sure. I'm not sure.
I will proceed to my next question, Mr. Speaker.
finish your question.
Then are you saying that legalizing this result won't cause any discrimination?
Yes.
Where is your basis, Mr. Speaker?
Based on this Republic
Okay, thank you very much, Mr.
in the
Speaker.
article of the Just Let Us Be
I
in
will
the Human
proceed
Rights
to my
Watch.
next question.
Let's give him the chance to read.
In the article Human Rights Watch, there are some countries in our countries that legalize this cross-gender
Okay, thank you
uniforms.
very much, Mr. Speaker. Therefore, are you saying that Philippines is already a gender-friendly country?
Yes.
Then, Mr. Speaker, are you not aware of the discrimination that the LGBTQ plus students are experiencing with or without the uniforms?
Yes, but if we have this law, they are
Okay,
free
thank
to
you
wear
very
what
much,
they want.
Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, do you agree that schools should focus first on strictly implementing existing laws in school to avoid these discriminations?
Yes.
Since you agreed, Mr. Speaker, do you conclude that we should not legalize this result since Philippines is not gender-friendly?
What?
Again, since you agreed, Mr. Speaker, do you conclude that we should not legalize this result since Philippines is not yet gender-friendly?
No.
Then, Mr. Speaker, how sure are you that leading of a policy framework is possible given our culture?
As so stated, that
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Now, third native speaker, you have 5 minutes to argue why it would not be practicable to legalize the rights of LGBTQ plus students to wear cross-gender uniforms. Please begin.
To our moderator, board of adjudicators, fellow debaters, and to the audience, good morning. Our second speaker on the beneficiality of the subject proposition has firmly established that legalizing the rights of the LGBTQ plus students to wear a cross-gender uniform will lead to their further discrimination. As the third speaker for the practicability of the proposition, we are convinced that the proposition is not workable. Our country is rich with the gender equality warriors from the grassroots way up to the Senate. Unless we have seriously unsocialized ourselves, most of us are aware that there are already existing laws and orders, memorandum circulars, all sorts of legislations that promotes LGBTQ plus rights of self-expression, gender equality, and the like. In almost all divisions and departments in the government and private institutions, this has been effectively observed and has significantly reduced gender-based
their spaces, and our schools are no exception. But there are more significant memorandum circulars in school that needs urgent attention, such as the Anti-Bullying Law of 2013, enacted to protect students from alarming levels of bullying, the Anti-Sexual Harassment Act, which states that all members of the society shall value the dignity of every individual and enhance the development of its human, guarantee fellow respect for human rights. There is the Safe Spaces Act, defining gender-based sexual harassment in streets, public spaces, online, educational institutions, providing protective measures and prescribing penalties. We have enough legislations protecting our students if it is indeed and in fact properly observed and implemented by school authorities. If this resolve only seeks for the safety and protection for people from discrimination, there is the Bill of Rights standing high and mighty in the 1987 Philippine Constitution. It protects us from all kinds of discrimination even long before we decided our gender preferences and gender dress expression. The DepEd Order number 065 issued in 2010 provides that wearing of school uniform is not required. It is discretionary to the respective educational institution to encourage the wearing of school uniform to maintain equality, safety, orderliness, and discipline. Again, legalizing cross-gender uniform, which is impracticable, not beneficial, and purely unnecessary. Instead, we suggest strongly for reason of practicability, let us rather rally for the aggressive implementation of these existing orders and policy, encourage gender sensitivity and gender responsiveness, which can eventually effectualize the option of gender-neutral uniforms in the campus. In today's social climate, it is imperative that young women are given another alternative to the traditional skirted uniform in order for them to promote a gender-neutral environment and feel comfortable, safe when riding motorcycles, public modes of transportation, and also when gliding stairs. Having this gender-neutral uniform will give safer space not only for the LGBTQ+ students, but for all of the students. Finally, most importantly, the proposition is not practicable as it is a defiance to the most dominant Catholic faith, which is strongly against it. Our Muslim brothers and the huge Christian institutions to which we are all a part of. Philippines is not an affluent country, but it is a Christian nation that is ours to riches. We may change preferences in life, but God's laws and established order will not. According to the Catholic Bishops' Conferences, the Philippines, there are about 1,300 Catholic schools spread all over the Philippines. This argument tells us that legalizing cross-gender uniform is not practicable as it would violate the precious conviction of the Christian and Islamic faith, particularly those most conservative believe in proper gender apparel. About our hunger for self-expression and equality, let us consider the right of those weaker than us. Our rights ends when someone else's rights begin. On that note, I rest my case.
Thank you very much, Ms. Speaker. Reminding our debating team that communication is limited to written communication among your teammates only. Alright, so your third affirmative speaker, you may now go to the podium for your cross-examination.
Like this.
You have 3 minutes.
Good morning, Mr. Speaker.
Good morning, Mr. Speaker.
Should LGBTQ students in the Philippines be allowed to wear cross-gender uniform if it makes them feel more comfortable and authentic in their gender identity? Yes or no?
Again, as I stated in my second argument, Mr. Speaker,
I only accept yes or no answer, Mr. Speaker. I only accept yes or no answer.
Then can you please repeat your question, Mr. Speaker?
Should LGBTQ students in the Philippines be allowed to wear cross-gender uniform if it makes them more comfortable and authentic in their gender identity?
No, because it will not make them comfortable,
Okay,
Mr. Speaker.
thank you. Do you deny the fact that some school obligate students to wear school uniform?
Again, Mr. Speaker, can you please repeat your question?
Do you deny the fact that some school obligate students to wear school uniform?
No, Mr. Speaker.
Are you aware that LGBTQ also advocates this agenda?
Mr. Moderator, I think Mr. Speaker delivered his question properly. I can't.
Are you aware that LGBTQ advocates also advocate this agenda?
It is irrelevant to the context, Mr. Speaker.
By not legalizing, are you aware that our country will be stuck to these bias norms?
Mr. Speaker, the bias word is not a part of our legalization argument.
We will stay in the... But based on your speech, do you include religion? Do you aware of Philippine Constitution Article 6 Section 2, church is separated from the state?
Yes, of course, Mr. Speaker.
Okay, that's all. Thank you.
Thank you very much. You may now be seated. Alright, so at this point, let's take a short break and before we hear the rebuttal speeches of the team captains. They are given 5 minutes to wrap up their summary and defense of their respective cases, arguments, and evidence. Shall we please revert to 5 minutes? Alright, so the 5 minutes break begins now. Our 5-minute break is over, and now let's listen to the rebuttal speaker of the negative side. Please proceed to the podium. You have a maximum of 5 minutes to speak, and it starts now.
Mic test. To our moderator, board of adjudicators, our worthy opponents, fellow debaters, and to the audience, good morning. First, I will discuss the loopholes and fallacies that we have observed from the opposing team. The first speaker of the affirmative side presumed openly and covertly the very conclusion of his argument that is to be demonstrated instead of supporting it or providing evidences to it. Therefore, the said speaker committed of assuming the initial point, also called fallacy of circular reasoning. The third speaker of the affirmative side jumped to conclusions about the validity of the proposition with some but not enough evidence to back it up. He also stated and expressed his arguments in too many words than necessary, which resulted to confusion. Also, he ended his speech in a way where it's about getting people to do or agree to the proposition because everyone else is doing it. Therefore, the third speaker committed fallacies which are hasty generalization, fallacy of ambiguity, and appeal to the masses. During the interpellation, one of the speakers of the affirmative side committed a deductive fallacy of circularity, where she, in question, simply refused to believe the argument, ignoring any evidence given. Therefore, invincible ignorance is present on their side. Moreover, all the speakers of the affirmative side, from the necessity to practicability, presented various arguments that are flawed. One of these came from the necessity speaker of the affirmative side, stating that the legalization of the proposition will lessen problems like bullying, harassment, and discrimination, since they will have more confidence in expressing themselves. The affirmative side assumed all most of their arguments are true, without presenting some evidences or any facts or information whether their arguments are proven true. And now, I am going to present the summarized arguments of our team that the affirmative side failed to destroy. From our necessity speaker, her first argument states that there is no definite directive that forbids students from dressing however they like, nor is there a state law that mandates the usage of school uniforms. And for her second argument, it states that legalizing cross-gender uniforms is not on top of the list among the ways to support LGBTQ+ students, and that the resolution of the criminal case involving LGBTQ+ students should be the main focus. Therefore, it is not necessary. From our beneficiality speaker, all his arguments hasn't been destroyed by the other side. Therefore, it is not beneficial. And lastly, from our practicability speaker, her first argument states that for cross-gender uniform, legalization to be practicable, implementation of existing laws that protects students, including the LGBTQ+, should be strengthened and implemented strictly. Her second argument states that let us rather rally for the aggressive implementation of existing orders and policies which can eventually factualize the option of gender-neutral uniforms in the campus that will give safer space not only for the LGBTQ plus students but also for all the students. And for her third argument, if the proposition is approved, it will create undue disadvantage and unrest to the huge Christian institutions, their students, and their very identity as a religious school. We would also like to emphasize that the third argument of our practicability speaker do not violate the separation of the state and the church. She's only saying that in making laws, the government should put into consideration all of its citizenry, including Catholics and other religious denominations. Therefore, it is not practicable. Once again, our team's essential point is that we disagree with legalizing the rights of LGBTQ plus students to wear cross-gender uniforms due to the statements that we have made. All the points were addressed and successfully proven her point. With all the statements, facts, data, proof, and pieces of evidences, I am certain that we, from the negative team, successfully challenged the definition that was defined by the affirmative side and contradicted the proposition citing its non-necessity, non-beneficiality, and non-practicability. Therefore, on behalf of the negative team, standing firm with the status quo, contradicting the proposition, and declaring with full confidence that we, the negative side, successfully achieved victory over this debate. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, rebuttal speaker of the negative side. The team who opened the debate has the absolute privilege to close the debate. So let's listen to the rebuttal speaker of the affirmative side. Please proceed to your podium. You have 5 minutes to speak.
To the Honorable Board of Educators, opposing team, and to my fellow students, a pleasant morning to each and everyone. I am going to present the key points that my team had already discussed. Your honors, with conviction, this law should be approved and implemented. The following would vouch my conviction. The first speaker emphasized that lawmakers and school administrators in the Philippines have recognized the prevailing problems of the LGBTQ plus youth whose flavor is to allow them to wear the uniform they are comfortable wearing. But despite the presence of policies which are regarded as strong on paper only, these policies have not been adequately enforced. That's why there are still prevailing cases of bullying and harassment. Furthermore, the first speaker emphasized that there is not yet a legislation that specifically focuses on legalizing the right to wear cross-gender uniforms. By enacting a law that will allow members of the LGBTQ+ to wear cross-gender uniform, it will become a deterrent for other students to mock, harass, or discriminate them because that is not the very essence of the law. To penalize persons who violate its provisions, provide that these sanctions or penalties are age appropriate. It was also argued that society is dynamic and that norms are not immutable and that therefore subject to change. We should allow more discrimination to the member of the LGBTQ+ community, and especially in our students. By allowing a law that recognizes their rights to wear cross-gender uniforms will help our society to slowly accept the new norm and thus creating a school climate that is inclusive and safe for everyone, regardless of their dress preference. The first speaker from the negative side stated that freedom of expression should not be prevailed. She also stated that there is no such law that prohibits the wearing of cross-gender uniform. Yet, she added the DepEd number 32 series of 2017, which states that policy within this law, it is stated that through this policy, the DepEd commits to integrate the principles of gender equality, gender equity, gender sensitivity, and non-discrimination, and most especially, human rights. The second speaker discussed the following benefits in legalizing the wearing of cross-gender uniform. Promoting exclusivity, cross-gender uniforms that allow LGBTQ+ students to wear their gender identity without fear of discrimination or harassment. Second, improving mental health. Legalizing cross-gender uniforms could alleviate negative emotions such as stress, depression, and anxiety by allowing them to express their gender identity in an environment setting that accepts them. Third, enhancing academic performance. Legalizing cross-gender uniforms could contribute in creating a positive and supportive learning environment for LGBTQ+ students, where they can feel safe, accepted, and comfortable in their environment, thus helping them achieve their full potential. Fourth, supporting human rights. Legalization of the cross-gender uniform will be a big leap in the promotion and protection of every LGBTQ+ member of the society, where they can express themselves and be treated with respect and dignity. Fifth, reducing bullying and discrimination. Legalizing cross-gender uniforms would promote this inclusivity and understanding of different gender identities. Thus, there will be a reduction in bullying and discrimination against LGBTQ+ members. The second speaker from the negative side stated that cross-gender uniforms should not be implemented to avoid further biases. And he also mentioned that wearing cross-gender uniforms with no benefit has no benefits, yet proceeded to imply the Debate number 32 series of 2017. Lastly, our third speaker also emphasized that allowing LGBTQ+ students to wear cross-gender uniforms is a practical step towards creating a more inclusive and accepting school environment. It is about respect and diversity in our society and ensuring that all students are treated with dignity and respect. The last speaker mentioned about self-expression, gender equality and equity from the negative side, but doesn't it contradict the statement of their first speaker where she stated that freedom of expression should not be prevailed? These are the following fallacies that was seen in their for the third speaker. She stated that the Philippines is a conservative country, yet according to 1987 Constitution, it remains dynamic and flexible. President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. said Wednesday, noting that it has undergone several amendments to keep up with their changing times. Thank you.
Your time is up. Thank you very much. Debating teams of Ajuy and Balasan. And that ends match 1 of the Supreme Debates. A round of applause to both our teams. May we now invite both sides to please cross the house and shake hands with your opposing team as our adjudicators are finalizing their scores. So as our adjudicators are finalizing their scores, again, thank you very much to our team Ajuy and Balasan. We will be hearing commentaries from our adjudicators. So, din kita mapwesto as you are hearing the commentaries. Sige, please go back to your houses. And I would like to turn you over to our program host, Sir Ryan.
Mic test. Wow, that was like beating the heat on stage. And it is such amazing to hear amazing inputs coming from both of our amazing participating teams, from the affirmative and the negative side. So we will have our first inputs and feedback to be given by our adjudicator. Let's have from Attorney Stephen P. Sonza.
Sorry for the voice. First, I would like to congratulate all the participants for both teams, the negative and the affirmative. It was a very energetic engagement for this debate, and I have seen that both parties have give their best effort for this debate, and hopefully the adjudicator and also the audience have gathered some information and inputs and a very knowledgeable discussion on this very timely topic of our society for today. And that's all.
Thank you, Attorney Stephen. Next, we'll have feedback to be given by Mrs. Joanna Paula Bibiñas. Ma'am.
Good morning. So, I think both parties or both sides were able to research well with the topic. However, I have just, I would like to express my observation that somehow when we speak in the microphone or when we speak with an audience, we have to make sure that our data is concrete, our source of data is present, so that we can clearly express what we have in mind. So a while ago, Attorney Joe and I are talking here that if we give our inputs right now, somehow we will lose the excitement or the most exciting part. So maybe we'll add later na lang. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am, for your inputs. Next, we will have from our chief adjudicator, we will have Attorney Joanna Marie Bermudo Benhira.
Good morning, everyone. First of all, I would like to thank the DepEd and all the participating organizations for the opportunity of inviting us to be the adjudicators in this debating competition. And I would like to congratulate both teams. You did an amazing job. The students and the coaches of our schools have also did their work very well with the result of our first match. So I would like to back up the statement of Ma'am Joanna Bibiñas, karon madula na ang spice and the excitement if we really delve into the feedbacks for each of the teams. So, ako lang is, i-congratulate ko lang ang both teams. They have really educated the audience well on the proposition. They have also prepared on their evidences, on their research, and though hindi na sila, pwede na sila sa mga collegiate matches, no? I was brought back sa akong memories ang time man nga nag-debate ako. So, amo lang na akong mahambal, and thank you and congratulations in advance to all the winners.
Thank you also to our set of adjudicators for giving their profound inputs and feedback to both our participating teams from Ajuy National High School and Balasan National High School. So while waiting for the official result, whoever wins this first set of debate proposal, congratulations in advance. And sa aton mga audience, palakpakan natin liwat ang aton nga competing team. So, in a short while waiting for the official result, for our next competing team, we will have the Salmorin National High School and the San Rafael National High School. So just sit back and relax. All the best for your topic.